Good evening, everyone. My name is Councillor Debbie Arnott and I'm the Mayor at Warrnambool City Council, and I will be chairing tonight's council meeting. I would like to formally welcome everyone watching this council meeting. This meeting will be live streamed to allow for public viewing and transparency. A recording of the meeting will be uploaded to Council's website for members of the public to view at their discretion. This scheduled meeting will be conducted in accordance with Council's governance rules, and any interruptions to the meetings or actions not in line with behaviour expectations will be dealt with in accordance with these rules. I'd like to ask councillors to stand for the opening prayer in acknowledgement of traditional owners. We will now proceed to the items of the agenda, commencing with the opening prayer and an acknowledgement of the traditional owners. Almighty God, grant to this council wisdom, understanding and sincerity of purpose for the good governance of this city. Amen. I wish to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Thank you. There are no apologies here tonight, councillors. We'll move on. Councillors, at item 3 on the agenda, we have a recommendation before us to confirm the minutes of the scheduled meeting of council held on the 7th of August 2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Akoish, thank you. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Are there any declarations of conflicts of interest this evening? No, all good, thank you. For almost 70 years, Meals on Wheels has played a crucial role nationally in supporting the health and well-being of thousands of older Victorians each year across 87 service locations. Every day, Meals on Wheels brings a friendly smile, a chat about the weather, a nutritious meal, and the knowledge that someone will drop by to say hello. In this way, Meals on Wheels positively improves the lives of many people, particularly elderly Australians. And last year in Warrnambool, volunteers delivered over 21,000 meals to 285 residents, and that's just a marvellous feat. Volunteers are crucial to the operation of every Meals on Wheels organisation. They drive the cars and deliver meals and food services. Volunteers also serve on management committees. They can also use their office skills, set up databases, write newsletters or prepare promotional flyers for events. Every act of volunteering at Meals on Wheels contributes to a happier, healthier community. So a very big thank you to everyone involved in Meals on Wheels, and congratulations on 70 years of providing such a wonderful service to so many in communities. So thank you. Item 6, CEO, are there any public questions tonight?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there's been no questions lodged for tonight's meeting.
Thank you. We will now move on to the agenda, the officers' report section of the agenda. Item 7.1, draft operations report, financial statements, annual performance statement and government checklist 2022-23. Agenda page number 5, Directorate Department Corporate Strategies. The purpose of this report is to present the draft 2022-2023 performance statement and financial statements to Council for in-principle approval as recommended by Council's Audit and Risk Committee and in accordance with Section 99 of the Local Government Act 2020. It further seeks to nominate 2 councillors to have the authority to sign the annual accounts and performance statement on behalf of Council. Once final sign-off has been received from the Victoria Auditor General's Office, VAGO, this authorisation will enable Council to meet its statutory obligations for the presentation of its annual statements as part of the annual report, to an open council meeting by 31 October 2023. The annual report, which includes the financial and performance statements, will return to council for consideration at a future council meeting. Also provided with this report for council's information is the draft report of operations, including governance information, which accompanies the financial statements and the annual performance statement. This report also seeks, in principle, approval for the certifying of the governance information by the Mayor and Chief Executive Officer. Councillors, are there any questions before I seek a motion? Do I have a mover? Thank you. Councillor Blaine. What is your motion?
I'd like to move that one, council approve in principle the 2022-2023 financial statements, refer attachment 7.1.1, which have been subject to external audit by the Auditor General's agent, with the outcomes also having been reviewed by Warrnambool City Council's Audit and Risk Committee. Two, that council approve in principle the 2022-2023 performance statement, refer attachment 7.1.2, which has been subject to external audit by the Auditor General's agent, with the outcomes also having been reviewed by Warrnambool City Council's Audit and Risk Committee. Three, that Councillor Angie Paspaliaris and Councillor Ben Blaine be authorised to certify the 2022-2023 financial statements after any changes recommended by the review of audit from the Victorian Auditor General have been made. Four, that Councillor Angie Paspaliaris and Councillor Ben Blaine be authorised to certify the 2022-2023 performance statement after any changes by the review of audit from the Victorian Auditor General have been made. Five, that Mayor Debbie Arnott and Chief Executive Officer Andrew Mason be authorised to certify the government and management arrangements as contained in the draft operations report. And six, that council put out for public advertisement its intention to consider the annual report at a future council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. It's important to see how council has performed financially and operationally for the year. It's been a year of challenges with the rising cost of especially our capital works program, but council has actually performed quite well. There have been a few little changes through the audits from the Victoria Auditor General, especially in relation to property revaluations. But once we get final sign-off, I'm confident that we will see I'm confident that we'll see us pass the audit. Pass the Victorian Auditor General's audit, and I'm looking forward to these actually being presented properly in the annual report at the next council meeting in October. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just add that the Auditor General's agent has done the audit, so an external auditor, and it has been reviewed by the Warrnambool City Council's Audit and Risk Committee. So I feel that the documents so far have gone through the right processes and just awaiting final sort of outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Ziegler.
Yes, Mayor, I'd just like to say that this particular motion is incredibly important as a necessary part of the statutory oversight to make sure that the operations and financial situations of the council have been checked and are all transparent and above board.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak further to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
No worries. So I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. We'll move on to item 7.2, Advocacy 2023-2024, agenda page number 7, Directorate Department Corporate Strategies. This is for council to consider advocacy priorities over 2023-2024. Are there any questions before I seek a motion? No. Do I have a motion? Councillor Ziegler, what is your motion?
I move that the council formally adopts the advocacy priorities identified in the report.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, Mayor. I think that the advocacy priorities this time are a very exciting mix of achievable and very worthwhile projects and aspirations. I'd like just to point out that we're making the Warrnambool a Clean Energy Centre of Excellence with our partnerships between Deakin University and Southwest TAFE. That's a very important aspiration in terms of the economy and the ecology of our particular region, as well as much wider. Of course, the housing availability is a key issue across Australia as well, and we're advocating for council to create awareness within other levels of government about opportunities that exist to make more housing more affordable for Warrnambool. The Mary River revegetation and pathways is a particularly gratifying project which is due to enhance the much loved environmental feature of Warrnambool, one of our major rivers, tourist attractions, as well as an incredibly important part of our local ecology and environment. The early years workforce and infrastructure has been under a lot of stress, particularly with the numbers and the overload of staff and facilities and whatnot. So we're advocating for improvements in that particular area. That's incredibly important. We acknowledge in that particular item that the staff who are involved with that have been doing an outstanding job and have achieved wonderful things, but we need to advocate for more assistance and for an awareness of this particular area that other levels of government have to support. And the Port of Warrnambool, of course, very important to Warrnambool. The breakwater and the harbour, particular facilities down there. The 19th century breakwater is a wonderful feature. It's not only essential for the Port of Warrnambool, but it needs to be repaired. We've got to advocate for funding and assistance to get that done. So with a lot of really good projects in there that I think are particularly achievable.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I think the council is obviously obligated to consistently and persistently target both state and federal governments for priority projects and funding opportunities. And so strong advocacy needs to be the conduit between these projects and those funds. There currently is I guess, a well-known squeeze on finances, especially at state level, which has reduced funding opportunities in some areas. But the government or governments do have money available in other areas. I think what this council's aim to do is have a good mix of projects which have already had significant work done behind the scenes to prepare them for potential funding opportunities, as well as being projects that were targeted in some way to meet the criteria for government spending. It also required a consistent list of projects to ensure advocacy, messaging and campaigning were aligned and remained aligned. They cover obviously across a variety of areas, so primary needs like housing, early years services and road safety, as well as industries important to our region like tourism infrastructure, natural environment and particular green initiatives which are outlined in our community-led documents. This doesn't mean that we don't have other major project strategies underway. We do like the aquatic strategy, for example. That'll feed into a large funding request, but the realistic achievement of this type of project is still years away. But the preparation phase does start now to bring some of the bigger or major projects to fruition down the track. I think that as the major regional centre for the Southwest, in my view, Warrnambool should have tremendous appeal for garnering government support for our priorities, because not only do they have the potential to improve the infrastructure and safety and services for people who live in our city locally, but for a very large and broader outlying population that uses Warrnambool for its primary and elective needs. So I think we can use this to our advantage.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Is there any other councillor who wishes to speak? Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. Some of the long-term priorities that must be addressed by Council in the near future include resolving two key intersection safety issues along Raglan Parade, namely the Hyder and Ardley Street intersection and the Fitzroy and Botanic Road intersections, with both high crash areas. Secondly, our breakwater requires up to $11 million spent on it to stabilise the deteriorating condition of the breakwater, which is constantly impacted by the heavy surges of the Southern Ocean. Other essential financial commitments to the future include renovations to our deteriorating Lighthouse Theatre and the Whale platform. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Blaine.
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. I would just like to add that our priorities actually feed into each other as well in order to try and address more than one issue across the region. Looking at housing availability for key worker housing, that's a key issue, and that's probably one of the issues that's actually affecting our early years workforce and infrastructure. Because our childcare services, with the demand that we're seeing, are facing workforce shortages, and there's a range of reasons, not just with the inability of untrained staff, but the ability to bring staff into the city. And being a service centre, this is going to be key moving forward, that we're able to service not just Warrnambool but the greater region. As my other councillors have said, you look at the some of the tourism offerings and the local amenity offerings like the Merri River revegetation and pathways and the Logan's Beach viewing platform. These are going to be key projects if they come to fruition. Also, Lake Pashobe Stage 3. We've done stages 1 and 2, and they look absolutely fabulous. And moving into Stage 3, it'll really add to the amenity of our city, not just for those who live here, but for those who come to visit as well. Moving forward, though, as Councillor Paspaliaris has said, we've got some really exciting projects. The aquatic strategy is going to be a huge game changer, not just for Warrnambool, for the region as we continue to move forward. Briley is going to be critical infrastructure for our city as we continue to grow, and also looking forward, it's important that we're planning for not just now, we are planning into the future. And I really do hope that, and look, with a good mix of projects like this, I am confident that we will garner support. We've just got to work at it. There will be opportunities there with state and federal governments, and it's up to us to work for them in order to achieve them for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Councillor Jelly, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I won't go over, everyone's more or less talked about them all, and I've got it all written down as well, so I won't be repeating it. We're all on the same page here. There's a great variety of projects there, and also the bigger projects that are we're working on behind the scenes. They're really, really important as well. So they all working together. But what I look forward to is that in the coming months is working together with fellow councillors, CEO and appropriate officers in the areas for these, and heading off to Spring Street and meeting with other politicians, both state and federal, to make these things happen. I think it's really important to get down there in front of them and and meet up with them and tell them what Warrnambool needs and what we're prepared to work with them to do. So it's a positive advocacy plan for this year.
Thank you, Councillor Jolly. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No, well, I'd just like to say there's no doubt that funding levels of government have been impacted by the pandemic, and as well the decision not to hold, from the Victorian government not to hold and be host of the Commonwealth Games. So that has meant there's been a shift in priorities. And we now find ourselves in a position to really advocate strongly for our share of the $2 billion that's been put together as a package for the regions. I feel strongly that our advocacy priorities are achievable and they will have a strong strategic basis. They tie back well with our council plan as well as the Warrnambool 2040 plan. And we really do need to embark on a campaign to make sure Warrnambool is front and centre and the level of governments here and are aware of what we need for our community and the long-term benefits that our advocacy will provide. And as all my fellow councillors have said, we have some projects that are really achievable, but we are also now looking to the future, and I really look forward to being able to get down there and really advocate strongly for this wonderful city that we live in. So there being no further speakers, Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to add anything to your...
Just a closing note, and I'd like to acknowledge the collegial approach that the councillors have taken to these advocacy items. Everyone's spoken very positively in briefings and tonight as well about each of these items for advocacy. And it's worth noting that in recent times, the council's had advocacy success, which is very notable. And our background notes here relate the examples of the Warrnambool Library and Learning Centre, where we advocated and got 16.3 million. Reed Oval, 7 million. City Centre renewal was 10 million. Lake Patobe Building Better Regions was 1.45 million. Briley Reserve, $1 million. Jetty Flat Pavilion, $500,000, and the Port of Warrnambool improvements, $3.5 million. It just proves that advocacy efforts can have great effect, and as the Mayor has mentioned, the fact that we're not now going to the Commonwealth Games, maybe there's a bit more money coming from Spring Street, and we want part of that for these achievable goals.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to item 7.3, Planning Scheme Amendment, 19 Horn Road, Warrnambool, agenda page number 10, Directorate City Growth. This report provides information on a planning scheme amendment request received from Myers Planning Group on behalf of 82 Raglan Parade Joint Venture to rezone the land at 19 Horn Road, Warrnambool, also known as Lot 2 on Plan of Subdivision 510713S, from farming zone to commercial 2 zone. It is recommended that Council request authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare an amendment to the Warrnambool planning scheme. Councillors, are there any questions before I seek a motion? No. Do I have a motion? Councillor Blaine, what is your motion?
I'd like to move that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ziegler. Thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. This is really exciting, continuing to see the commercial precinct out at Horn Road continue to grow, and I think it just shows how much our city and how much confidence there is in our city, because there is demand for more commercial land as we continue to move on. So I don't think there's going to be any negative impacts to the surrounds, being agricultural land. I think it just builds on what's already there. So this is really exciting to put this out, and I look forward to it coming back to council. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Plain. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I'll just endorse councillor Blaine's comments that it is an addition to our commercial aspirations as well, and I think the imposition on neighbours is minimal.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Paspaliaris.
I'd just add that that I do support this amendment to rezone the current farming land at 19 Horn Road to commercial land. Again, just on what Councillor Blaine said, it does mean that we are, as a city, destined to grow, so we'll require further commercial growth and expansion to provide for an increase in population and its ongoing needs, and it is obviously similar to what's already adjacent in terms of the Eastern Activity Centre. That in itself has got its own structure plan, so there's obviously elements that have already been outlined within that plan, so I would support this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this motion? No, look, I think this is just a sensible approach to a piece of land that is ideal to be rezoned into a commercial 2 zone. Future land use there lends itself to some commercial use, so I'm happy to support the project. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you. I'll put it to the vote now. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We will now move on to item 7.4, the planning permit application 23 PP 2022-0195, 23 McKernan Road, Warrnambool, agenda page number 15, directed City Growth. This report provides information on the planning assessment and provides a recommendation for the application to develop the site known as 23 McKernan Road, Warrnambool, with 2 double-storey dwellings, and recommends that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to conditions. Are there any questions regarding this motion? This recommendation, sorry. Councillors, do I have a mover or a motion?
I'll move.
Yeah. Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. What is your motion?
To accept the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ziegler, thank you. Councillor Paspaliaris, would you like to speak to the motion?
I will, thank you, Mayor. I guess the proposal for me doesn't seem to overdevelop the site with 1 dwelling going to 2 dwellings. And I think that one would consider that there's overall community benefit in terms of the marginal increase in the number of dwellings to aid the housing demand. It does, however, have a different built form, which is double-storey. That does appear to be different to the usual for the area. But I think that from the officer's report, the main concerns have been around flooding and flooding risk and flooding mitigation design. So for me, it would be that there definitely seems to be a more rigorous standard set for flooding mitigation design for this permit, which should allay some of the concerns or objections received regarding the localised flooding in this area from heavy rain events. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Arnott. The officers, in this case, for this application, have gone to a lot of work to ensure that they've made whatever conditions that they're able to mitigate any problems with flooding and with drainage in that particular area, it being a fairly heavy subsoil, whatnot, in particular area. I don't think there's an issue with the double-storey nature of the development. in particular. I'm happy to support the motion in terms of the fact that we're looking for extra housing, and the Salvation Army have gone to the effort of creating 2 houses where there was previously 1.
Thank you, councillor Ziegler. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this motion? No, look, we do make note there was five objections received in relation to flooding concerns around this property, and as a result, the information available in the drainage strategy and additional information will be required in the stormwater management plan, with the plan to address localised flooding to ensure that the proposed development does not increase the likelihood of flooding in the area. So with these conditions, I'm also happy to support the application. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak further?
No, thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to item 7.5, planning permit application PP 2022-0120/271 Koroit Street, Warrnambool, agenda page number 19, Directorate City Growth. This report summarises the planning assessment and provides a recommendation for the application to develop the site known as 271 Koroit Street, Warrnambool, by way of retaining the existing dwelling and construction of 2 new dwellings at the rear, and recommends that council issue a notice of decision to grant a permit subject to conditions. Councillors, are there any questions regarding this recommendation? Thank you. So, councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, what is your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. Like to move a motion that council, having caused notice of planning application number PP 2022-0120 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and or the planning scheme, having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, decides to determine to issue a notice of decision to grant a permit for the application for PP 2022-0120 under provisions of the Warrnambool Planning Scheme in respect of the land known and described as a Lot 8, CA PSH WAN TSH WARR 271 Koroit Street, Warrnambool, Vic 280, for the partial demolition, alterations and additions to existing dwelling, construction of a front fence and construction of 2 additional dwellings in accordance with the endorsed plans, subject to the following conditions, is as per the officer's recommendation be accepted. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, councillor Taylor. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Ziegler, thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. I'm fully aware of the 8 objectors to this planning application, and initially did not like the intrusion of privacy into the backyards of houses in Warland Grove. But on a closer inspection of the 2 dwelling plans, I've noticed that the living areas, both on the ground floors and the bedroom windows on the top floor, screen to a height of 1.7 metres above the finished floor level, with either fixed screens or manufactured obscure glass with the screen or glazing to have a maximum transparency of 25%. So I do not have a problem with this planning application. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, councillor Taylor. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thanks, Mayor Arnott.
Do any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris.
Thank you, Mayor. Whilst officers have, on balance, recommended a permit to be approved for this application, I do have a few concerns. The discussion in the delegate report refers to the site located within the heritage overlay, which generally seeks to limit the extent of development that occurs in order to protect identified heritage assets. Additionally, it notes that heritage and character should not preclude infill development, rather that appropriate development should adhere to the range of design considerations, demonstrating that some level of change within heritage areas is envisaged. When I consider the permit application within the context of this discussion point, I feel that there is reference to limiting the extent of development, but that it should not preclude infill development and that such development should be appropriate. I agree that infill to the rear of 271 Croat Street can coexist with heritage conservation. However, I do not agree that going from one single-storey dwelling to a total of 3 dwellings, 2 of which are double-storey, aligns with the term appropriate development in a heritage precinct. The report goes on to say that consideration was given to striking the right balance between providing additional housing while not unreasonably eroding the heritage fabric of the site and wider heritage precinct. I disagree with this component, given an alternative and perhaps more acceptable design could include one house at the rear of the existing dwelling, say a 2 or 3 bedroom single-storey dwelling at the rear, which would provide an additional housing option, while also remaining out of sight from street view and alleviating neighbours' concerns with visual amenity and the imposing built form of 2 double-storey residences. I think there is no doubt that large central properties may be right for development, but fundamentally I believe this development design will not sit sympathetically within this heritage precinct, and there are reasonable and acceptable alternatives which will still serve a more considered development approach without the severity that I think this particular permit application suggests. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Akosh.
Thank you, my Honor. In my view, this proposed development of 271 Croydon Street is a concern for the following reasons. As my colleague, Councillor Angie, went to allude more, is the site is covered by heritage overlay, which seeks a limit change that distract from the heritage assets. And the second is inconsistency of neighborhood characters, and also not being compliant with the Warrnambool planning scheme, the Croydon Street West Heritage Precinct guidelines, and the Warrnambool City Council guidelines. So we know Warrnambool is facing issue of housing, but at the same time we have land, and developers are trying their best to do to prepare lands. So you have land everywhere, and I think it's far better to look for other places instead of the heritage overlay. So I will not support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Akosh. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Jolly.
Thanks, Mayor. I would have to agree with my fellow councillors Paspaliaris and Akosh in their response with this. I've got concerns over that it's an inappropriate development there. Yes, I have big concerns about the double storey there at the back. That it quotes in the report, it states that the property at 8 Wollongrove behind this proposed development appears to have a 3-metre hedge and secluded private open space. Well, I have concerns that this secluded private open space will be lost to them. The car parking on the site, I feel, is a concern. There's a double garage at the back of the main house that's being renovated, and then a car park for each of the others. There's, overall, there's, I think, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bedrooms there. So that could be very difficult with parking and coming out onto Koroit Street, which is a busy thoroughfare there, up to the hospital, people walking past, coming out that driveway. I just think the developer has tried to squash a lot into that area, and a single story, 2 or 3 bedroom development out the back, I wouldn't have had any problem with this, but I feel the developer hasn't compromised.
Thank you, councillor Jelly. Councillor Blaine.
I'd just like to foreshadow, Mayor, that if the vote does fail, that that there'll be a second vote to decline the application on the grounds that councillor Paspaliaris outlined. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Blaine. This is one of those very difficult decisions. We take note that there were 8 objections received, and it was all around the density, the heritage overlay, and being an inappropriate development, and was inconsistent with neighbourhood character. There were some further conditions put into the recommendation, so more screening and window treatment. Personally, I understand that we do need to have higher density housing within the centre of Warrnambool. We do have a housing shortage. This, I do have concerns about the style of the buildings that's being proposed. I do understand that from the Koroit Street that the 2-storey structure actually will sit lower than the existing structure. And we do have the ability to have a more affordable product for either purchase or rent. Being no further speakers, councillor Taylor, do you wish to make any statement before closing?
No, thank you, Mayor Anna.
Okay. I will now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? So 3 in favour. Councillor Taylor, Councillor Ziegler, Councillor Arnott. Those against? Councillor Blaine, Councillor Paspaliaris, Councillor Akosh, Councillor Jelly. The motion is defeated. Thank you.
I do have an alternative motion.
No, you're just going to move a motion because I've foreshadowed it.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Shall I move the motion,
Yes,
Madam Mayor?
thank you.
So I move that council, having cause notice of planning application number PP 2022-0120 to be given under section 52 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and/or the planning scheme, and having considered all the matters required under section 60 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, decides to determine to issue a notice of refusal for application PP 2022-0120 under the provisions of the Warrnambool Planning Scheme in respect of the land known and described as a lot 8, CAPSH, WANTSH, WARR 271 Koroit Street, Warrnambool, Victoria 3280, for the partial demolition, alterations and additions to existing dwelling, construction of a front fence and construction of 2 additional dwellings for the following reasons. 1, the built form outcome is not consistent with the predominant scale of heritage buildings as supported by clause 15.03-1L. The bulk and presentation of the proposed form adversely affects the significance of the heritage precinct as required by clause 43.01, including in relation to views through and between properties. The application fails to respond to the objectives of clause 55.02-1 as 2 additional dwellings represents an overdevelopment of the site that does not respect existing neighbourhood character. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Jelly, thank you. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I will just say that I've basically said how I feel about this issue and that I will support this motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jelly, do you wish to speak?
I'm the same. I would support this motion. I fear it's going to affect the amenity of the precinct there too much. But yeah, exactly what I said before.
Yep. Thank you, councillors. Now, are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Koch?
Yeah, I think it's, as councillors, it's our responsibility also to see our community living in harmony in their neighbourhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? So carried four. Those against? Carried 3. Thank you, councillors. So the amended motion is carried. Thank you. We will move on to item 7.6, the Bushfield-Woodford Strategic Framework Plan, agenda page number 25, the Directorate Department City Growth. This report provides information to Council on the progress to date on the preparation of the Strategic Framework Plan for the townships of Bushfield and Woodford, as well as future steps in the implementation of the SFP. The report recommends that the draft SFP be released for public consultation. Councillors, are there any questions? Do I have a motion? Councillor Jelly, what is your motion?
That the council endorse the release of the draft Bushfield-Woodford Strategic Framework Plan for public consultation for a 1-month period.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ziegler. Councillor Jelly, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This has been a great project over the last year or so. Vital for that area out there, Bushfield-Woodford, which is a huge growth area, lots of different families, young families especially, and this is important to release to the community for public consultation. This has been an important strategic project, and it will facilitate these areas to develop in a sustainable manner, ensure that the appropriate infrastructure is provided. I want to thank the community for their input to this so far. I think in April this year, a few of us went out to the Bushfield Hall out there, and the staff ran a very successful information and discussion with the folk out there, and there was a lot that attended. It was really good for them to put forward their thoughts, and so I look forward to putting this out there. I know there's a lot of people out there that are waiting to see this, and this will help grow that area in time to come. So very much support this going out.
Thank you, Councillor Jelly. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. Yes, it's very important that the people with stakes in this particular area and outside the area express their opinions, their desires and wants for the Bushfield-Woodford area, because to this point we haven't had a cohesive strategic framework plan, and we need one to make sure that the development happens the way that people want it. And the only way to do that is to get the consultation back from the folks who worry about that particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to add that I think the townships of Bushfield and Woodford, as far as what I can see from the different steps that have been formulated and completed so far with this strategic framework plan, the communities are very well engaged with, have been very well engaged with each step that they've been included in, given the numbers noted both initially online and also with the in-person facilitation. It's very obvious to me that they're very heavily invested in their communities. What I sense has been a recurring theme is in some of the documentation already is maintaining the rural village character. So that's what I've picked up on when reading through the draft. I'm just hoping that there'll continue to be a great deal of commentary on this draft plan in the coming weeks so that both communities can help fine-tune the strategic plan to their satisfaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Blaine?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. It is a really exciting piece of work for Woodford and Bushfield, and it's been great to see, as everyone said, how engaged the community actually have been in the future of that plan. And I'd just like to point out, as this is going out, wastewater management, there are challenges with infrastructure that isn't actually around Woodford and Bushfield, and these are things that will have to be addressed as we continue moving forward and as it continues to be developed. I am in support. I hope it does stay as that lovely rural village feel that everyone talks about, but it does outline the key infrastructure issues that are in that area that will need to be addressed as it continues to grow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Taylor?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. This strategic framework plan will provide a long-term vision and framework to guide land use and development and manage the future growth of these settlements to a planning horizon of up to 20 years ahead. It is good to see Eastern Mar being involved in the planned development, and the plan will guide many inquiries from landowners throughout the townships to provide increased land availability, updated physical and community infrastructure and wastewater issues. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No. As all my fellow councillors have said, this is a very important piece of work that's going out for some further consultation. It is there to help guide us in many years to come to how that Bushfield-Woodford area will look. And yes, I think very strong community input, and I would urge anyone with further comment to please come forward and make their voices be heard. Councillor Jelly, do you wish to speak before closing?
Yes, just to reiterate just what you've just said, that encourage people that are interested, people that live out there, to have a look at this and put forward their comment. People have chosen to live out there. It's a lifestyle. We want to make sure it's protected to keep that sort of lifestyle, but with the right infrastructure to support that for years to come. So encourage everyone to be involved.
Thank you, Councillor Jelly. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. We will move on to item 7.7, the tender evaluation 2023-015R, Warrnambool Hockey Club pitch replacement. Agenda page number 31, the Directorate City Infrastructure. The purpose of this report is to provide information on the consideration of tenders received for tender 2023-015R, Warrnambool Hockey Club pitch replacement, and the tender evaluation panel's recommendation to award Polytan. Are there any questions regarding this motion, this recommendation, sorry? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Ziegler, what is your motion?
I'll move, Mayor Arnott, that the officer's recommendations be accepted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Arnott. I think that this is a great step forward. It's actually not unexpected, nor is it unprecedented. It's something that the hockey club needs, and I think that we have to support it appropriately. And it's quite sensible that this recommendation comes up.
Thank you. Councillor Paspaliaris, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just that the funding is a collaboration between council and the Warrnambool Hockey Club, so their contribution will be, or should be, $200,000. And then just on the award for tender, the Polytan company was the most cost-effective and was, from all reports, the most reputable. They have had some experience in very high-level delivery of this type of project previously. So happy to support the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspallaris. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to the motion? No. Just like to say that the installation of the existing hockey pitch was back in 2006, and there's been no further investment since then. Currently, council are contributing $800,000, $200,000 from the Warrnambool Hockey Club, so it's been $1 million allocated to this project. The hockey club will be required to transfer $200,000 to the Warrnambool City Council, and if any funds from the $800,000 that the council have been required will be, if they're not all used, they will be required to be returned to council. And we're looking at a completion date set for 13th of Feb 2024 with minimal impact on the hockey school programs. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to say anything further to the
I'd
motion?
like some closing remarks, Mayor Arnott. I think that this is very creditable that we've required a fairly substantial contribution from the hockey club, $200,000. And overall, the project is a worthwhile one for the city in total. It means that we'll have a hockey pitch of particularly good standard, and it just fits in with all the other high-quality sporting facilities that this town is able to furnish.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We will now move on to item 7.8, occupancy of sport and recreation facilities policy, fee model and club feedback. Agenda page number 34, directed community development. This report recommends endorsement of an occupancy of sport and recreation facilities policy and provides a summary of feedback resulting from consultation. Are there any questions regarding this recommendation? No. Do I have a motion? Councillor Ziegler, thank you. What is your motion?
That council endorses the occupancy of sport and recreation facilities policy.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Blaine, thank you. Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, Mayor Arnott.
Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. The idea of this report, and this fee model, it's to try and provide equity in between the clubs. There were 31 sport clubs consulted during the draft policies formulation, and feedback was received by 15 of the clubs. It was clear they understood the reasoning behind the fees was to try and create more equity amongst users in the city. Even though I would say that some clubs didn't welcome the fee, they understand where it's come from. One thing I would like to say on this policy, though, is these agreements should outline what council's responsibilities are with all sport and recreation facilities moving forward, and what council actually are responsible for and what the clubs are responsible for. And the funds that will be raised will go back into these facilities as we move forward. Hopefully, and I do hope and I do think that this will create equity amongst the users. It encourages sharing of facilities to try and maximise use. Look, I do remember that these are community organisations that are run by volunteers, and moving forward, moving forward though, I hope that council, I believe the council will have a greater responsibility in looking after these facilities to ensure that these community sports can continue into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Paspaliaris.
I'd just like to add, because Councillor Blaine was quite comprehensive, but I think that because council requested a review of the user fees and charges for sports grounds, and the review found that there were obviously quite a lot of gaps. There were things that were very inconsistent, and so this has been, quite a challenging body of work where officers have obviously had to come to a certain formula or model that will work across lots of different clubs and facilities. And I think it just means that there's, as Councillor Blaine said, there's more equity, there's a greater transparency on how certain things and certain decisions and parts of the policy have obviously come to light. So I think that this provides at least a good framework and a good basis where if there are some questions over certain bits and pieces, that there is obviously documentation, whereas prior to that it was sort of all over the shop. So I think this really sort of brings it all back to a good base with which to work from. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paspaliaris. Are there any other councillors who wish to speak? No? This policy has been designed to have some fairness and clarity around the fee structure of our sporting clubs and the premises that they occupy or use. And it's been found in the past there was great inequity. So I think this policy, and the staff have worked very hard with the clubs and all the user groups to come to a point where I feel everyone has a clear understanding of their roles, responsibilities, and just how that fee structure is. And moving forward, this can also be built on and it also outlines, what council's responsibilities could be in the future as well. So there being no further speakers, Councillor Ziegler, do you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Arnott. The fact of the matter is that to this point, council had no policy to guide the allocation of sport and recreation facilities, and there were a number of inconsistencies that played across the range of various sporting facilities. It's time that we tidied that up and had a policy to create, as Councillor Blaine has said, some equity amongst the different groups and to give some consistency amongst the occupation of the various facilities and to help with asset renewal of all the various facilities. So about time we had a policy, and if this gets up, we'll have one.
Thank you, Councillor Ziegler. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Move on to item 7.9, Advisory Committee Reports, agenda page number 40, Directorate Executive Services. This report contains the record of one advisory committee meeting. Are there any questions regarding this recommendation? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Taylor, what is your motion?
Thank you, Mayor Arnott. I'd like to move that the record of the Environment and Sustainability Advisory Committee held on the 29th of June 2023 be received. Thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Jelly, thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor Arnott.
Councillor Jelly, do you wish to speak? Does anyone wish to speak to the motion? Okay, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7.10, informal meetings of council reports, agenda page number 41, Directorate Executive Services. The purpose of this report is to provide council with copies of informal meetings of council, previously known as Assembly of Councillor Records, as previously required under Section 80A2 of the Local Government Act 1989. Are there any questions regarding this recommendation? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Blaine, what is your motion?
I'd like to move that the informal meetings of council held on the 14th, 21st and 28th of August 2023 be received.
Thank you, Councillor Blaine. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Paspaliaris, thank you. Councillor Blaine, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Paspaliaris? No. Do any councillors wish to speak? No. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Carried unanimously. Item 7.11, Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council Activities Summary Report. Agenda page number 42, Directorate Executive Services. This report summarises Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council activities since the last ordinary meeting, which particularly relate to key social, economic and environmental issues of direct relevance to the Warrnambool community. Any questions regarding this recommendation? Do I have a mover? Councillor Taylor, thank you. Do I have a, what is your motion?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move that the Mayoral and Chief Executive Officer Council Activities Summary Report be received. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Koish, thank you. Councillor Taylor, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Koish, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor.
Any councillors wish to speak? No. I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Notice of motions. We have not received any notices of motion. 9, the general business. Councillors, are there any items of general business? No, thank you. Chief Executive Officer, have we received any notices of items of urgent business?
No, Mayor, no.
Thank you. Being no further items of business, I declare the meeting closed at 6:51 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.